My name is Stephen Park. I'm 62 years old. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm an actor. I was living in Clinton Hill, and my father wanted to be, he didn't like the city life, and the first place we moved to was Waverly, New York, which was right on the border of Pennsylvania. But it was a really small town, and there wasn't really a lot to do. Went to Vestal, New York, which is right next to Binghamton, and started in fourth grade there. We moved into this house, and all the kids from our neighborhood, they all came to my front door to basically meet me. But there was always this just kind of it was friendly and slightly hostile at the same time kind of thing. And that became kind of the norm in a way. These guys who were my friends were also I was always taken advantage of when I was a kid. And they would know somehow when my parents weren't home. And they would come to my door, and I would open the door and there would be one of these guys, and then he would come in and he'd let all these other guys into the house, and they'd run down to my basement, and we had these sofas in our basement that they loved to jump on and turn off the lights. That kind of shit was happening when I lived there. It was kind of like they were my friends, but they would be making fun of me at the same time, or they were taking advantage of me. And it's funny because I went through elementary school, middle school, high school, and I was a class clown. So I was popular and I had a lot of friends, but the moment I left to go to Boston University, I didn't look back, and I basically just wanted to get out, and did not really maintain contact with anybody from back then. But I did struggle at Boston University because I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and I was kind of in pre-med, taking chemistry and biology, and I was failing all of the classes, and I ended up going back home I transferred to SUNY Binghamton, and at that time I still didn't know what I wanted to do. So I would start with a full load of classes, and I'd be failing. So I'd end up with a class like Zen that my karate teacher was teaching, because it was something I was interested in. And I was like, wow, I think I maybe need to drop out, because I didn't know what I was doing. And I was my body started breaking down, I think just from the stress, and I developed this arthritic condition. But I had a girlfriend at the time who said, before you drop out, just take one semester of classes that are just fun. That should be your only criteria, which was a complete alien thought to me, because school was supposed to be, math and science. My father's always math and science, right? So I took an acting class, I took a mime class, I took a voice and a body movement class, and it all came naturally to me, because I was always kind of a performer anyway, and I also made Super 8 films, so I was very much interested in filmmaking, in doing skits, in goofing around, making people so that became kind of my identity during that time. So I ended up getting my degree in theater. But one of the things I did when I was there, was at SUNY Binghamton, is because I was, it was just like most American theater. It was mostly white casts and mostly white stories. And they would do Ain't Misbehavin' every 2 or 3 seasons. So there would be some black people on stage. And I was studying playwriting with a black playwright and teacher at SUNY Binghamton. And, we'd just talk about just the racism in the department, that everybody just kind of this is just the way it was auditioning for Midsummer Night's Dream, and I was auditioning for the role of Puck, and it came down to me and one of the kind of big actors in the school who was white. And then of course I didn't get it, but I didn't expect that I was going to get it. And then I went to my teacher at the time, one of my teachers who I was probably closest to, and I said, there's racism in this department and I'm going to speak out about it. And then I got the student government involved, and I just kind of staged a protest against the theater department. And then there was a meeting with the faculty, and the student officers came, and they kind of were supporting me in this. The one thing that came out of it was they developed this role of the minority representative, I guess they called it. Like by the time I was graduating, I basically just gave the role. Somebody else had to take on this position, which was like a nothing position. And of course, everybody's white in the department. So, and they're like, well, what do I do? And I said, you just need to care. You just need to care. That's it. If you care, then you'll know what to do. You know, years later, I had done Fargo, and there was a lot of like, press about it, and the scene I was playing this Japanese American Mike Yanagita, and so there was a lot of very positive kind of feedback about my performance in that. And then I was cast on Friends for a couple of episodes, and I was walking on the set, and I hear over the walkie-talkie, the first AD goes, "Where's Hoshi, Toshi, or whatever the fuck his name is? Get the Oriental guy." And this is James Hong they're talking about. He's the guy who's playing Hoshi. And so he's been in the business for 40 years at that point. Now it's much longer. But I'm like looking around, I'm like, am I the only one that heard? I'm not the only one that heard that, but there's nothing. And then I called someone I knew at at SAG, who was part of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and I told him what happened, and he said, well, maybe you want to write an article for the LA Times. So I started thinking about this article, and I think I recently had seen Jerry Maguire, and Jerry Maguire writes a mission statement. So I was like, I'm going to write a mission statement to Hollywood. So I just kind of like wrote what's going on in the set. The set is toxic, it's racist. There's like it's like egomania, here on the set. But beyond that, this is the norm in Hollywood. This is kind of where it's at. And so I wouldn't normally speak out like this, but I'm going to, because this is unacceptable. But I also was kind of just speaking to like, what should be the mission of Hollywood? What should be the mission of people who are putting media out into the world? And that was kind of like what I thought, like we should be, we're so privileged here that we should be doing everything in our power to just express the very best of humanity, instead of perpetuating racism, perpetuating all the, sexism, everything that is perpetuating all the ills of our society. Like that's what Hollywood is doing. Like we're just perpetuating propaganda or whatever. And so I was just putting forth what I thought at the time, and now, like what is the highest thing that we could be doing as an institution, as someone that's putting media out into the world. So that's kind of was the genesis of this mission statement. So I sent it to the LA Times. LA Times brought over a couple of reporters, interviewed me, and they never published it. So this was like the beginning of the internet. This is in '97. So I had my email list, and I just said, okay, I'm just sending you this out on my email list because I wouldn't print this in the LA Times. And if you feel moved to, just, send it around. And then within a week, it had gone to all of these, around the country, because I was getting emails from a lot of Asian American publications for permission to reprint it. And I was like, of course, so then it was everywhere. I spent probably the next year, I was getting invited by all these different universities and stuff to speak because of this mission statement that I wrote. But I was very influenced by Spike Lee. Spike Lee, my first film was Do the Right Thing. And I was very kind of inspired by his outspokenness, especially about race issues. That was my awakening to identity, a political awakening. I became really outspoken. And I knew this mission statement was always going to stay with me. I mean, it's out in the world, anybody can look it up. But I think ultimately I was always very proud of it. I didn't care if I didn't get work because of it, then so be it. That was my attitude. But I think it still holds up what I wrote. so much that's happened in the world is just proof of what I was talking about. Everything that's gone on in the theater, We See You, that whole movement. I mean, this kind of racism that I was protesting against when I was in school that was the American theater. That was the theater that was going on everywhere in the country. Yeah, it was a very different time, and back then I was just wanting to break ground. Like, where can I break new ground here, So that was kind of my mentality back then. I don't know what's next. I know I'm doing a lot with my parents, taking care of my parents as they are in this final chapter of their lives, and that takes up a lot of my time. And I think about death a lot. Like, I see death is on the horizon. Those things are going to happen. I might go before them. Who knows? Anything could happen. I don't have like a 5-year plan or a 10-year. It's like my life has become more spontaneous. Being an actor, I don't know what's happening next most of the time. But then the next moment, like all of a sudden I'm in Hungary or I'm in Germany, you know what I mean? Like, things happen like that as an actor all the time. You're going from unemployment to, working with Wes Anderson, like that's, so it's not a very secure life. So this particular understanding helps a lot. Because, when I was a younger actor, like if I wasn't working, man, I'd go into depressions and just really suffering through all of the insecurity of that. So that's lessened a lot, thankfully. But it's always fun to just work and to explore different stories and different characters. And I'm writing a screenplay now, and that's a new adventure for me. And it's been hard. Like, I love having written much more than I love writing right now. But yeah, so I aspire to being a better writer. And then ultimately filmmaker, because I want to direct what I'm writing as well. Just making films and like getting and working with people you love and creating together, like there's nothing more fun than that. I still haven't, like I fantasize about like just like the role that's going to like push me to this next stage, like, and it might never happen. I mean, it could be a lead role in a series, for instance. Or a lead role with like a great director. Like a couple of years ago now, I mean, the movie hasn't come out yet, but Bong Joon-ho's next movie I'm in, and it's going to be coming out in January of next year. But it's fascinating to work with these really brilliant directors and to just learn how they do things and how they think, and and also aspiring to do that myself. And it's, here I am in my 60s wanting to become a director for the first time. So yeah, so there are big things that I would like to accomplish that I've never done, that I'm excited about. My name is Stephen Park, and this is my Korean American story.